Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling, and really appreciate you guys coming by the channel to spend some time with me on the video. Really appreciate that. I think you guys are going to get a lot out of this particular video. We're going to be talking about fishing bridge piers, bridge pilings, some of the best bass structures all over the country. They work 12 months out of the year, and we fish a lot of bridges here in Missouri where I'm from, and I fish bridges all over the country, but there's some techniques and tips that I want to give you guys in today's video that's really going to add up to a lot of different success regardless of the conditions, like the water clarities, type of fish that you have in the lake, the area that you're in as far as geographical location. It's going to be something for everybody in today's video. Also guys, just a quick invitation. I'd like to invite everybody out there to please consider subscribing here to Intuitive Angling. It's free and easy. All you have to do is push that subscribe button. We talked about that here recently. We've got 60% of the people that watch these videos are not subscribed to the channel, and it's just a good way to support the channel by hitting that subscribe button. Really appreciate that. And if it seemed like my eyes are red and puffy this morning, guys, I have got some bad seasonal allergies right now. I don't know what the deal is this time of year, but I don't know if about you guys. Like when I was younger, I never got any allergies like sneezing and watery eyes, but as you get older, it seems like it more of a deal here. So I'm all puffed up this morning. Okay guys, what I want to do here is I want to talk about a little bit about the bridge pilings themselves, about the different types of bridge pilings, how the fish position on them, how they use them in relationship to like current and water clarity. And then I'm going to show you my favorite lures here. I've got 4 lures that are, in my opinion, they're the best lures for fishing bridge pilings with. So I'm going to show you what those are and give you little tips and advice on how to fish them. Now, first of all, one of the things you're going to find out about bridge piers is they are a little bit better if the water's cleaner. I've never really done that great on bridge piers in dirty water. So if you have water visibility that is like, say, less than 1.5 feet or something like that, they're probably not going to be that good. Now, occasionally, if you have a bridge pier that is like right against the bank that's in shallower water, yeah, you might be able to catch one on dirty water, around that shallower piling. But for the most part, you really need, from my experience, you need to have around at least 2.5 or 3 foot of visibility for bridge piling fishing to be really good. I like between, say, 2.5 foot to maybe 7 or 8 foot of visibility. That seems like when the fish use them the most, because when you're talking about bridge pilings, most of the time you're talking about fish suspending around those bridge pilings, except for the ones that are shallow against the bank. And depending upon the bridge you have, some bridges, like we got some bridges here like at Stockton Lake in Missouri, you may have 20 pilings that go across the lake, and some bridges may only have 2 pilings. It just depends, on how the bridge is set up. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Now, first thing you have to understand, there's 2 elements that will determine where these fish are going to be at around the bridge pilings. Number 1 is current flow, and number 2 is shade. Both of them are really critical. Now, when you're talking about current flow, we've got a lot of different levels of current that run through a lake depending upon how much water they're generating or some type of lake they're on. Now, if you're fishing a lake like Lake Pickwick and you're fishing some bridge piers up around the upper end of the lake, when they release water from that dam, that water comes around those bridge piers so fast you can hardly hold your boat on it. And other lakes, like if you just have a typical man-made impoundment, you're going to have the current flow around those bridges be fairly minor in relationship to like a river type lake. But I have seen situations like when the water's high and they're pulling a lot of water that it creates a significant amount of current. Now, if you have a light current, say the current is being generated by the wind, or maybe they're pulling a little bit of water, and you notice, like if you put your boat next to the bridge pier, you slowly start to drift back, but not very fast at all. The fish are not really victim to that current very much. So you're apt to catch fish all around the bridge pier. But as that current gets more intense, those fish are going to look for current breaks around that bridge. So if you have a pretty significant current, they're always usually going to be positioned in and around the downside part of that bridge. And it makes it a little bit more difficult to fish. Also with that, the fish are going to be positioned extremely tight to the areas that have shade on it. If you are fishing any time of the year when that water temperature, say over 50, 55 degrees around bridge piers, shade is always where the fish are going to be. And based upon the time of the day, you're going to have different shade lines around a bridge. So always make sure, and this is even more critical as the water becomes clearer, that you're casting around those shade pockets. Those fish, they like to ambush on those shade pockets, and you may have, you know, an area of shade that extends this far out off the bank, and those fish like to be right there where the shade meets the light. So that's one of the most easy and key elements when you're fishing bridge piers. Super important if you're fishing bridge piers that have water visibility of like over 3 or 4 feet and you don't have much current and you've got a bright sunny day. Also with that, when you're talking about fishing bridges in general, if you have a lot of clear water, you're going to have obviously fish that suspend more and suspend deeper. And I have seen sometimes, particularly in the summertime, where they will get underneath the bridge between the piers. So in other words, if you see the sun coming up from the top, usually there's a shade line underneath the bridge that can be straight into the bridge, or it could be off to the bridge a little bit based upon the sunlight angle. And a lot of times the bait fish will follow that shade line right across the lake in the middle between the bridge piers, and you can catch those fish that are chasing those shad schools deep that are really just relating specifically to that shade. Now, the bridge piers, another thing you'll find about bridge pier fishing is it's really good on the lakes that have a mixed species of bass in it. If you have a lake that has a decent population of spotted bass love bridge piers. That's probably my favorite type of bridge pier fishing, is when I have a lake that's got largemouth, spotted bass, and some smallmouth in it. All 3 species will use it, and based upon the density of those species, you know, one is going to be usually more predominant than the other. For the most part, I've seen the more clear water that you have, you usually have some type of a spotted bass population, and spotted bass love to suspend. So you have a lot of spotted bass on clear water fisheries in those situations. The boat positioning is also pretty critical, but it's not like there a lot of people have this myth that you need to be casting down the current, bring your lure with the current. I haven't found that when you're trying to position your boat around those bridge piers, unless, like I said, you have a significant current. But usually what I'll have, guys, let's say for example, this is the bridge pier right here, and this is the down current side, and this is the up current side, and then you got the 2 sides here. Usually what I'll do anytime I'm fishing a bridge pier, my first cast is I get on the down current side and I make a long cast down to each side of the bridge pier, and I try to bring it down the face of the bridge pier. That's a real, high percentage type of an area, and you're apt to catch one anywhere along there. My next cast, I usually turn the boat and I come up here and I make a cast across the front of the bridge. Try that a little bit, and then I'll come all the way around. I'll make another cast on the down current side. So you pretty much have to fish all the way around the bridge piers. And one of the things about it is once you start catching a few fish, you will notice a pattern that exists. You will notice that the fish, based upon the combination of the water temperature, water clarity, the current flow, all that together, you can pattern these fish on where they're going to be positioned on those bridge piers that particular day. I've seen them all over. Like I said, I've seen them on the ends, I've seen them on the sides, I've seen them, around any irregular feature. Another thing about bridge piers that you can't see from the visible eye is sometimes the construction of the bridge pier makes it where there's some current breaks underneath the water that you're not seeing. So that's why, it's really critical to cast all the way around the bridge to make sure that you hit it from every angle. Okay, let's talk a little bit about my favorite lures now. First one I want to talk about is a small swim bait. This is probably one of my favorite bridge piling lures out there. This is a Megabass 3-inch spark shad with the Megabass Hazendong shad head on it. Okashira head, I'm sorry. Also, guys, I'll link all of my favorite bridge pier lures in my tackle warehouse description in this video if you guys want to pick up some. But this little 1/8 ounce Okashira head on the Megabass spark shad, I like this when I'm casting down the side of the bridge piers. I'll usually cast it out there like on 6-pound test line, throw it out there, let it sink based upon how deep I think the fish are. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll graph around the bridge pier with my 2D sonar. I'll try to notice the depth I see the bait fish at. That gives me an indication of how deep I want this thing to go, and I'll just reel it right along the side of the bridge piers like that. It's a really good way to catch the fish if they're fairly aggressive in any type of water clarity, but specifically more clear. Next bait is one of my favorite lures to fish. If you have lower light conditions, or if that water visibility is sort of in that 2.5 to 3.5 foot range, a little bit more off colored. And guys, you need to pick you one up. This is this Megabass Shading X75. This is a finesse jerkbait. You can catch them on a regular jerkbait too. I've caught a lot of fish on bridge piers on like the Megabass 110. But this small jerkbait that goes deeper, this is a Megabass, like I said, it's the Shading X75. I'll link it in the description. Guys, this little finesse jerkbait, same deal. Cast a long cast parallel to those bridge sides, down the edges. Just reel this thing and fish it, you know, depending upon the water temperature. If the water's colder, fish it slow. If the water's a little bit warmer, you can fish it fast. But guys, the bass love these little finesse jerkbaits on any type of a bridge pier. Catch a lot of fish on them. The next one is sort of what I consider my mopping up lure. Now, I'll start out with the jerkbait, like the Shading X75 and the Swimbait. That usually catches the aggressive fish. But here's the thing about bridge pier fish, guys. There's always schools of them down there. And these bridge pier fish schools are highly educated. They do get a lot of fishing pressure, so they get conditioned to baits really quick. So you have to switch up baits after you catch a fish or two on a bridge pier usually. I'll start out with the jerkbait and the Swimbait, and then I'll mop it up with a wacky rig zoom trick worm. This is a deadly technique here to catch those fish that are not quite as aggressive and a little bit more lethargic and finicky. Again, I'll put it on a 6-pound test line, throw it out there. If the current's blowing a little bit, I may put just a little bit of weight, like a lead weight in it or something to get it down quicker, but I'll throw it out there on the up current side and just let it drift and just let it just sort of wobble down, you know, down into the depth zone that I think it is. Also, sometimes with this, I'll rig it on a drop shot and I'll fish it vertical around the bridge piers, especially if you have a lot of current where you've got like an eddy behind the bridge piers. You can drop shot the wacky rig trick worm, or sometimes I'll use like a little 4-inch Cinco or something like that and fish it vertical on a drop shot in that current eddy. And finally, guys, this is one of my favorites for fishing bridge piers in the summertime of the year, like right now, and that's a big super spook, topwater super spook, guys. This is one lure you don't see a lot of people fish. I do like the chrome, but any shad pattern will work. You throw this super spook out there next to some type of the shady side of a bridge piling, and if there's any bigger fish on the bridge pier, because bridge pier fish tend to be smaller overall, although you can catch a good one occasionally, but a topwater lure around a bridge pier will pull up the biggest fish in the school out there. A lot of times what happens is when, say you get one on a topwater, they'll come up and blow it. There's usually always a school of 5 to 10 fish behind it. And you know, topwater is a really good lure to catch them on in the summertime of the year, fishing it next to the shady side of the bridge piers. So anyway, guys, just a little mini seminar there on bridge pier fishing. Like I said, it's one of the most consistent ways to catch bass. It's one of the most easy ways to catch bass. Down here in Missouri, all the guides, like on Table Rock Lake, all they do is take their clients with night crawlers and live night crawlers and crawdads on bridge piers, and they catch a bunch of fish all day. Hold a lot of fish, they get a lot of fishing pressure, but it's a pretty consistent way to catch them day in and day out. So hope it helps out. We'll see you guys.